The book club met every Wednesday evening in the back room of an old charming bookstore called the Book Nook. The room was cozy, with floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with a mix of new releases and forgotten classics. A large oak table dominated the center, surrounded by mismatched chairs that had been collected over the years. The members of the club, a mix of avid readers and literary enthusiasts, looked forward to these weekly gatherings where they could discuss their latest read and enjoy each other's company. Sophia, the club's founder, was known for her impeccable taste in literature. She had a knack for finding rare and intriguing books that sparked lively discussions. When she introduced the new selection, The Grisly Secrets, a palpable excitement rippled through the room. The novel was said to be a lost masterpiece, recently rediscovered, and had gained a reputation for its dark and intricate narrative. The Grisly Secrets, Sophia explained with a twinkle in her eye, was written by an obscure author named Edgar Thorne. The book was filled with elaborate and gruesome murders, described with such literary elegance that it was both horrifying and captivating. The members were intrigued, eager to delve into the twisted world Thorne had created. Each member received a copy of the book, its cover adorned with a sinister illustration of a shadowy figure lurking in the darkness. As they opened the novel, the musty scent of old paper filled the air, adding to the atmosphere of anticipation. The first chapter plunged them into a world of mystery and macabre, where each murder was more shocking and creatively executed than the last. In the days that followed, the club members found themselves engrossed in the novel, often reading late into the night. The grisly details and clever twists captivated their imaginations, sparking intense discussions at their weekly meetings. They debated the author's intent, the psychology of the characters, and the intricate plotting of the murders. The book became an obsession, each member eager to unravel the next horrifying revelation. As the weeks went by, the club's discussions grew more animated and detailed. They analyzed each murder scene with a morbid fascination, appreciating the author's ability to craft such vivid and unsettling scenarios. The characters in the novel felt disturbingly real, their fates intricately tied to the dark forces at play. Unbeknownst to them, the darkness of the novel was beginning to seep into their lives. The lines between fiction and reality started to blur, and the once vibrant camaraderie was tinged with an undercurrent of unease. The members couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the grisly secrets of the novel were somehow reaching out from its pages. The excitement of discovering a rare and captivating book was overshadowed by a growing sense of dread. The members of the book club were bound together by their shared fascination, but they were also being drawn into a sinister game, one that would soon reveal the true horror lurking behind the grisly secrets. As the club prepared for their next meeting, the room at the Book Nook seemed darker, the shadows longer. The anticipation of discussing the latest chapters was tempered by an unspoken fear. Each member clung to their copy of the novel, unaware that the obsession that had brought them together was about to tear them apart. The atmosphere in the Book Nook was tense as the club gathered for their Wednesday meeting. Jenna, one of the most vocal and enthusiastic members, was absent. Jenna was never late and had always been the first to arrive, often bringing freshly baked cookies to share with the group. Her empty chair seemed to cast a shadow over the entire room. The club members exchanged worried glances, but Sophia, always the optimist, tried to lighten the mood. "I'm sure Jenna just got caught up in something," she said with a reassuring smile. "Maybe she had a last-minute work emergency." The others nodded, trying to shake off their unease, but the sense of foreboding lingered. As they began their discussion of the latest chapters of The Grisly Secrets, it was clear that Jenna's absence weighed heavily on everyone's mind. The conversation lacked its usual liveliness, and their analysis of the novel's chilling events was punctuated by awkward silences. Emily, the protagonist of our story, couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. The next day, Emily decided to visit Jenna's apartment. She knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Growing more concerned, she called Jenna's phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. Feeling a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach, Emily contacted the police to report Jenna missing. The police took the report seriously and began their investigation. They interviewed the book club members, trying to piece together any clues about Jenna's whereabouts. Days passed with no leads, and the sense of fear among the club members deepened. During the next meeting, the club was subdued. Jenna's absence was a stark reminder of the dark turn their lives had taken. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Jenna's disappearance was connected to the novel. She spent hours rereading the book, searching for any clues that might explain what had happened to her friend. As Emily pored over the pages, she found herself drawn to one particular chapter. In it, a character who bore an uncanny resemblance to Jenna met a gruesome end, disappearing mysteriously before being found murdered in a manner eerily similar to the one described in the book. The parallels were too disturbing to ignore. Emily shared her discovery with the rest of the club at their next meeting. "I know it sounds crazy," she said, her voice trembling, "but Jenna's disappearance is just like the one in the book. The details match up too perfectly to be a coincidence." The room fell silent as the others processed her words. Sophia, ever the rationalist, tried to dismiss Emily's concerns. "It's just a book," she insisted. "There's no way a novel could be responsible for Jenna's disappearance. It's probably just a strange coincidence." But Emily could see the doubt in Sophia's eyes, and she knew that the rest of the group was equally unsettled. As the weeks went by, the sense of dread only grew. The once enthusiastic discussions about The Grisly Secrets turned somber, and the club members found themselves increasingly paranoid. They started to notice small, unsettling details in their daily lives, strange shadows, inexplicable noises, and a pervasive feeling of being watched. Emily became obsessed with uncovering the truth behind Jenna's disappearance. She spent every spare moment researching the novel and its author, Edgar Thorne. The deeper she delved, the more she became convinced that the book was not just a work of fiction, but a blueprint for something far more sinister. Emily's growing fear was compounded by the realization that Jenna's disappearance was only the beginning. The novel seemed to have a dark power that reached out from its pages, drawing its readers into a web of horror and death. And as the book club members continued to read, they too were becoming ensnared in its deadly grip. Emily's paranoia had reached a fever pitch. She no longer felt safe in her own home, convinced that she was being watched. Determined to find answers, she intensified her research into The Grisly Secrets and its mysterious author, Edgar Thorne. Her once cozy apartment was now filled with stacks of books, newspaper clippings, and notes pinned to the walls, creating a chaotic yet methodical investigation center. Late one night, Emily stumbled upon a breakthrough. Buried deep in an online archive, she found an obscure literary journal article about Edgar Thorne. The article revealed that Thorne had been a reclusive figure, obsessed with the macabre. He had written only one novel before disappearing under mysterious circumstances. The article mentioned rumors that Thorne had dabbled in dark rituals and that his novel was believed to be cursed. Emily's heart raced as she pieced together the connections. Thorne's obsession with murder and the supernatural seemed to have seeped into his writing, creating a cursed object that influenced its readers. But why was it affecting her book club so directly? The next day, she shared her findings with the remaining members of the book club. They gathered at the Book Nook, their faces pale with fear and exhaustion. Emily spread out the articles and notes, explaining her theory about Thorne and the curse. "Thorne's novel isn't just fiction," Emily said, her voice trembling. "It's a conduit for something dark, something that feeds on our fears and desires. The murders in the book are being recreated in real life, and I think Sophia knows more than she's letting on." The others listened in stunned silence. Michael, a quiet but insightful member of the club, spoke up. "If what you're saying is true, then we need to stop reading the book. We need to break whatever hold it has on us." Sophia, however, was not present at this meeting, which only fueled Emily's suspicions. After the meeting, Emily decided to confront Sophia directly. She drove to Sophia's house, her mind racing with questions and accusations. When she arrived, Sophia's house was eerily quiet. The front door was slightly ajar, and Emily felt a chill run down her spine as she stepped inside. The interior was dark, save for the dim glow of a lamp in the study. Emily cautiously made her way through the house, calling out Sophia's name, but there was no response. In the study, Emily found a scene that confirmed her worst fears. Sophia's desk was cluttered with documents, photographs, and handwritten notes. Among them were detailed profiles of each book club member, including their schedules, habits, and personal information. On the wall hung a large corkboard, covered in maps and pinned with red strings connecting various points, a classic murder board. Her heart pounded as she realized Sophia had been planning each disappearance meticulously. At the center of the board was a chilling focal point, a photograph of Jenna, with the date of her disappearance and the word "success" scrawled in red ink. Emily's gaze fell on an open journal on the desk. She recognized Sophia's handwriting and began to read, her hands trembling. The journal entries were a twisted mix of admiration for Edgar Thorne and detailed plans for recreating the murders from The Grisly Secrets. Each entry described the method and timing of the planned murders with sickening precision. Then she saw it, a recent entry with her own name. Sophia had planned Emily's disappearance, intending to frame it as the climax of her twisted game. Emily's blood ran cold as she read the final line. "Tonight is the night. Emily will be next." Desperate and terrified, Emily snapped photographs of the journal pages and the murder board. She knew she needed to get this evidence to the authorities, but first she had to get out of Sophia's house. As she turned to leave, she heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Panic surged through her veins as she realized Sophia was home. Emily quickly slipped out the back door, running through the garden and into the darkness. She didn't stop until she reached her car, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Fumbling with her keys, she finally managed to start the engine and sped away, her mind racing with fear and determination. Emily knew she had to act quickly. She drove to the nearest police station, clutching the photographs and journal pages. As she burst through the doors, she felt a glimmer of hope that she could finally end the nightmare that had consumed her life. At the police station, Emily felt a fleeting sense of relief as she handed over the photographs and journal pages to Detective Harris. He was a seasoned investigator with a stern demeanor, but a reputation for thoroughness. Emily detailed everything she had discovered, from the eerie coincidences in The Grisly Secrets to Sophia's chilling plans. Harris listened intently, his expression growing graver with each passing minute. "We'll need to investigate Sophia immediately," he said, nodding to a couple of officers who promptly left the room to follow his orders. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Please wait here while we verify your claims." Emily waited in a small, dimly lit room, her mind racing. She knew Sophia was cunning and manipulative, capable of anything to protect her dark secrets. Minutes felt like hours as she sat in the uncomfortable chair, her nerves fraying with each tick of the clock. Finally, Harris returned, his face a mask of seriousness. "We've dispatched officers to Sophia's residence. We'll also need to bring you into protective custody until we can ensure your safety. This evidence is compelling, but we need to handle this delicately." As they spoke, Emily's phone buzzed with a message. She glanced at it and froze. It was from an unknown number. "You can't hide. Tonight, it ends." A cold shiver ran down her spine. She showed the message to Harris, who immediately increased her security detail. The police arranged for Emily to stay at a secure location while they continued their investigation. The safe house was a nondescript building on the outskirts of town, surrounded by trees and far from prying eyes. Emily was escorted by 2 officers, their presence somewhat reassuring, but the tension in the air was palpable. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. The quiet of the safe house only amplified her anxiety. She replayed the events in her mind, trying to understand how Sophia had managed to orchestrate everything so perfectly. Her thoughts were interrupted by a faint sound outside, a rustling in the bushes. Her heart pounded as she crept to the window, peering into the darkness. She saw nothing at first, but then a shadow moved, and she caught a glimpse of a figure lurking near the tree line. Panic surged through her veins. She grabbed her phone and dialed Detective Harris, her hands trembling. "Harris, someone's outside," she whispered urgently. "I think it's Sophia. She found me." "Stay inside and lock the doors," Harris instructed. "We're sending backup now." Emily did as she was told, but her instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong. The officers assigned to protect her were nowhere to be seen. Had they been compromised? She couldn't wait for backup. She had to act. Summoning all her courage, Emily armed herself with a kitchen knife and cautiously made her way through the house. She needed to find the officers and warn them. She moved silently, every creak of the floorboards making her jump. As she neared the front door, she heard a muffled sound, like a groan. Emily followed the noise to a small storage room. Her heart sank as she opened the door and found the 2 officers unconscious, bound and gagged. She quickly untied them, and they groggily came to, clearly disoriented. "Sophia's here," Emily said urgently. "We need to get out now." As they stumbled to their feet, a figure emerged from the shadows. Sophia, her eyes gleaming with a cold, calculating malice. She held a gun, aimed directly at Emily. "You've been a clever girl, Emily," Sophia said, her voice eerily calm. "But this is where it ends." Before Emily could react, one of the officers lunged at Sophia, knocking the gun from her hand. A struggle ensued, the small room filled with the sounds of grunts and crashing furniture. Emily saw her chance and ran, adrenaline fueling her desperate escape. She burst out of the safe house, running blindly into the night. The trees closed in around her, the darkness almost suffocating. She could hear Sophia's footsteps behind her, relentless and unyielding. Emily's breath came in ragged gasps as she pushed herself to keep moving. Suddenly, she stumbled upon an old abandoned barn. She darted inside, hiding behind a stack of hay bales, trying to quiet her breathing. The silence was deafening as she waited, her heart pounding in her chest. Minutes passed, and she heard Sophia enter the barn, her footsteps slow and deliberate. "You can't hide forever, Emily," Sophia taunted. "This game is almost over." Emily's mind raced, searching for a way out. She spotted an old ladder leading to the loft and carefully climbed up, praying the creaking wood wouldn't give her away. She reached the loft and found a small window, barely large enough to squeeze through. Just as she was about to escape, Sophia appeared at the top of the ladder, her eyes burning with fury. "Goodbye, Emily," she hissed, lunging forward. Emily acted on instinct, grabbing a nearby pitchfork and thrusting it at Sophia. The force knocked Sophia off balance, sending her tumbling down to the barn floor. Emily didn't wait to see the outcome. She climbed through the window and dropped to the ground outside, running towards the distant lights of the town. She had to get to the police station, to safety. As she ran, she couldn't shake the feeling that this nightmare was far from over. Emily ran through the dense woods, her heart pounding in her chest and her breath coming in ragged gasps. The town lights flickered like distant stars, offering a glimmer of hope. She stumbled over roots and dodged low-hanging branches, every shadow seeming to conceal a lurking threat. When she finally burst out of the woods and onto a deserted road, she flagged down a passing car. The driver, an elderly man with kind eyes, took one look at her disheveled state and let her in without question. "Take me to the police station," Emily gasped, slumping into the seat. The ride felt like an eternity, but they eventually arrived at the police station. Emily thanked the driver and rushed inside, clutching the evidence she had collected. Detective Harris was there, his face etched with concern as he listened to her recount the events. "We have to arrest Sophia now," Emily insisted, her voice trembling. "She's dangerous, and she's planning something even worse." Harris nodded, his expression grim. "We've already put out an APB on her. We'll find her, Emily. In the meantime, you need to stay here where it's safe." As the night wore on, Emily remained at the station, pacing the floor and jumping at every sound. The tension was unbearable, and she felt like a caged animal. Hours passed without any news, and she began to wonder if Sophia had somehow managed to elude capture. Just as dawn was breaking, Detective Harris approached her, his face lined with fatigue. "Emily, we've apprehended Sophia. She's being brought in now. You did a brave thing coming forward with this evidence." Relief washed over Emily, and she sank into a chair, exhausted. She watched as Sophia was led into the station in handcuffs, her face a mask of cold fury. Emily felt a small sense of victory, knowing that the nightmare was finally over. But as the morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating the tired faces of the officers, something felt off. Harris called Emily into his office to finalize her statement. She followed him, still clutching the photographs and journal pages. Once inside, Harris closed the door and offered her a seat. "You did good, Emily. Thanks to you, we've put a stop to Sophia's reign of terror." Emily nodded, her mind finally beginning to relax. She placed the evidence on Harris's desk, ready to leave this nightmare behind. But then she noticed something. Harris's eyes were cold, calculating, just like Sophia's. Before she could react, Harris pulled out a set of handcuffs. "I'm sorry, Emily, but you're under arrest for the murders of the book club members." Emily stared at him in shock. "What? No, you've got it all wrong. It was Sophia. She planned everything." Harris shook his head, his expression devoid of sympathy. "The evidence we have points to you, Emily. The journal, the photographs, they all have your fingerprints. We found your prints on the murder weapon used in Jenna's case." Emily's world spun as she realized the horrifying truth. Sophia had framed her so perfectly that even the police were convinced. All her efforts to stop Sophia had only played into her hands. "No, this can't be happening," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. As Harris read her rights, Emily felt the weight of the handcuffs on her wrists. She was led out of the station in a daze, surrounded by officers who once saw her as a hero, but now looked at her with suspicion and pity. Outside, the sun was rising, casting a golden glow over the town, but for Emily, it felt like the darkest moment of her life. In the patrol car, she glanced back at the police station, where Sophia stood by the window, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. Emily's heart sank, knowing that Sophia had won. The nightmare wasn't over. It had only just begun. Emily was taken to the county jail, her pleas of innocence falling on deaf ears. As she was processed and placed in a cell, the cold, sterile environment felt suffocating. She sat on the hard cot, replaying the events in her mind, trying to find a way out of this twisted trap. Days turned into weeks as Emily awaited her trial. Her lawyer, a stern woman named Ms. Reynolds, tried her best to prepare a defense, but the evidence was damning. Emily's only hope was to somehow prove that Sophia had orchestrated everything. On the day of the trial, Emily sat in the courtroom, feeling the weight of every gaze upon her. The prosecutor painted a picture of a disturbed woman driven to murder by obsession, while Emily's defense struggled to counter the overwhelming evidence. Sophia took the stand, portraying herself as a victim who had narrowly escaped Emily's clutches. Her performance was flawless, and Emily could see the jury swaying in her favor. Desperation clawed at Emily's heart as she realized she was losing. When it was finally Emily's turn to speak, she stood shakily, her voice cracking with emotion. "I didn't do this. Sophia framed me. She's the real murderer. Please, you have to believe me." But her words felt hollow, and she could see doubt in the jurors' eyes. The trial dragged on, and Emily felt her hope slipping away. In the end, the verdict was delivered swiftly. guilty on all counts. Emily was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As she was led away in shackles, she caught Sophia's eye one last time. Sophia's smirk was a cruel reminder of the game she had played so masterfully. In her cell, Emily sat in the darkness, the weight of her fate pressing down on her. She was trapped in a nightmare with no escape, framed for crimes she didn't commit, and haunted by the knowledge that Sophia was free to continue her twisted games.